all your senses are heightened. You're just looking for signals everywhere that basically are going to answer the question, did I make the right choice? Will I like it here? Can I do this?
It just feels like you're not prepared to start that training and they don't matter. All in that first 30 seconds. Show up, ready, excited, and that's it. That's all that's required. We hired you. We love you.
So what does a new hire actually need to know on day one? We talked about job ads. We talked about hiring. It makes sense if we now talk about onboarding, and we'll include the idea of pre-boarding because from our last episode, apparently there's a pretty long pre-boarding period of time. So in my work with corporate teams, I've reviewed some onboarding proposals and goals from the corporate side, from various corporate departments. One thing I noticed right at the jump is they're almost always written from the company's point of view, what the company wants to achieve. And so you'll see things like, we want to reduce time to productivity. We want to ensure compliance is complete within 3 days. Or just even like we want to cut orientation from 5 hours to 3 hours. And I imagine that last one, for example, probably came from a real place, like feedback from store teams or new hires said onboarding was too long or too boring. But this goes back to the issues with employee survey questions. I question if time is actually the real issue and if it's actually more of a relevance and a method thing. Because if someone is saying it's too long, maybe they don't mean they want less. It maybe means they want better.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can talk about what better might look like. First of all, any overarching thoughts on the challenges with pre-boarding or onboarding?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind, it's actually been an issue the last couple years. And because I've hopped jobs quite a bit, admittedly, I can say that it's quite a few places, which is the pre-boarding now requires a lot of people to do some paperwork, obviously direct deposit and all that stuff, which you used to do on your first day. It's great that we don't do it now on the first day because now it's, ready to go for your first paycheck and all that stuff. There's no waiting. But the problem is that there's password issues and login issues and tech issues. And part of that is just, I think it needs to be communicated to candidates, or candidates just need to get better understanding sometimes that whatever login you create to apply is probably going to be what they're going to make you use to start the paperwork. So best to remember what email you used, what password you used. And that's partially on the candidate, but also on the company for not communicating that. And also creating a really intense system for having to reset a password. At most companies I've worked at now, it's call this IT number, have your blood type ready and your firstborn. And so there's just a lot of kinks in the process that are preventing a really smooth first day.
Yeah. Fun question. What do you think the point is of onboarding?
The point?
What's the point of it? What's the goal? What is the job of a good onboarding process?
Oh, that's actually not as simple of a question, I think, as it sounds, because I think it has several purposes. And then depending on the brand, I think it's how they probably determine what they focus on in that onboarding. So is it to make sure that you're ready to hit the floor the second you're done with onboarding and you're a very proficient manager or sales associate or brand ambassador or whatever, barista, whatever you are?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it to immerse you in company culture? Or is that interwoven in it? Because some companies really focus on that piece of it because they're okay, we'll teach you the register later, but we really want you to know who we are. And then other companies are yeah, we're this. Let's move on quickly. Here's a mock-up of the register. Let's make sure you know how to do that. Here's how the systems go. So I think it kind of depends on the company what they think is the most important. Is it culture? Is it operations? Is it you being ready to hit the floor?
What do you think? What's been your favorite onboarding experience? You don't have to name the company, but tell me what you liked about it.
So there are two companies I can think of in particular where my first couple of days were not really heavy lifting of any kind, and they really were product and or company immersion. And the reason I liked those is because one, what a great way to just sort of be introduced to a brand, to feel like you understand it, you're part of it, you're welcomed, because it's not rushed when they do that. Because it's both of those companies, it was 2 to 4 days completely off of the sales floor. Like I never saw a store. And I was just with someone whose only job was to onboard me. So I got the full experience of that. And it really set the tone for, okay, culture and what we do is important here.
Where were you? You were like in a corporate office?
So in one of them, I was in a corporate office, and another, I was actually in a store in the back room with the store manager who was training me. But that store manager was obviously proficient at scheduling their team so that like we were not bothered, so that they were really there just for me. And then my DM in that scenario had come in on my second day, and then he did part of the onboarding as well.
And what did that say to you, even not directly, but kind of indirectly, that they cared so much to take that amount of time to do that?
I think for me, the first thing I think is like that I matter, to just
Yeah.
be, to put it simply, like that investing in me being in the company was worth their time. Because, I think conversely, when you're training and you're kind of thrown in, you get the sense of like, oh, I just need to get to work. Like they just need a body and I need to like be the best I can be right this second.
Yeah. Hands, right? Like hands,
Yeah.
execute, go.
Hmm.
Yeah, it sounds to me like if it were me, it would have made me feel like they think I'm going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
Interesting. So obviously, like we're pragmatic people. We know it's not going to be all as long as you want lofty fluff. Like you need people, you hire them for a job, you're paying them to do a job, you need them to be productive and play a role in the company. Just put that right up front before we head into all the mushy feely stuff. But I find what I'm often trying to infuse into different corporate onboarding teams who have their programs, right? Like this is what we need them to know. I'm often also just trying to point out the idea that I feel like all your senses are heightened at this point in your job, right? Like you're probably a little excited or nervous or anxious. You're just looking for signals everywhere that basically are going to answer the question, did I make the right choice? Will I like it here? Can I do this?
Hmm.
And those three
Exactly.
questions, yeah. And it depends. Like sometimes I have worked with HR departments or employee experience teams who they play a role in onboarding. They have their set amount of time where they talk about culture and values. But I mean, I think it begs the question, is culture a module? Can you learn about culture in a learning system?
No, I don't think so. But I think that there's certain things that can be in a module that make the culture seem more genuine and a little bit more real,
Yeah.
even if it is a module. Again, as long as you see it, in the day to day as well. Like I work somewhere, one of those places, the place I trained in the back room, where basically like part of the culture was explained to be like basically like we have fun at work was like part of the culture.
Mhm.
And although I wasn't on the floor, I saw that actually happening on the floor as I like, walked to get to the back room every day. I would see people like, I'm like, oh, this is like a fun environment. People are genuinely having fun.
Yeah.
And I think had it not been in the module, I could have thought, oh, this team is just fun, or they're goofy, or maybe they're goofing off. Who knows? And if it's just in the module and I don't see it in real life, then it's just a lie. So actually seeing it both places is like a very like helpful foundation of like, okay, this is really the culture and it's really lived every day.
Yeah. Is there a place that you've seen where onboarding efforts lose the room most commonly?
You mean like what is happening during the training or like what is being said or like,
It could be either both. It could be either like, okay, it's day 3 and they've been sitting down for 5 hours every day watching videos, or it could be,
Mhm.
oh, we got to this culture video and everyone in private to me rolls their eyes and jokes about how corny it is.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess it's that. I mean, it really is like,
Mhm.
is it like overly modulated? And so one of the better ones I've seen did have a lot of modules that you had to go through, but it was actually the job of the store training you that after like a certain amount of modules or after specific modules, you actually had to go onto the floor and experience that thing. Didn't mean you had to do it like firsthand.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the better like examples of, okay, we're going to show you what we want you to do. And now someone's going to really do it with you and you're going to see it lived in real life. And that way you're not in a back room because you can't learn how to do anything just sitting at a computer. And again, to like be a little, deferential to corporate teams, like I get it. They have all those modules because they want to make sure everything is covered.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. But it's like, should everything be covered in a 5-day period where a lot of that time is at a computer? I don't think so. And to maybe jump ahead a little bit, I would love to see training that was actually not all in the first few days of work, which I think is like kind of a hot take, but I think that to your point, you're nervous, you're excited, you're wondering so many things.
Yeah.
You're overstimulated. Do we really need to give them all this information on day 1 through 5? I don't think they do, actually. I think that there's certain information you need, obviously, to begin. And then I think there should be like a 30, 60, 90 where we like layer in like maybe deeper institutional knowledge that is also formal training that oftentimes is in the very beginning. And then people have to go back because they don't remember it. And that's been pretty common in a lot of places I've worked, especially places that rely heavily on like niche product knowledge, like the beauty industry in general, or, kitchenwares where there's like a lot of different, you're remembering what the warranties are on things and how many brands there are and price points. So a lot of brands try to put that all in the front, like, okay, we're going to learn all this stuff. And it's like, okay, no one's going to remember that. Why don't we give them the large overview, culture, etc. And then slowly through time, as they experience real life on the floor, then go back and dig deeper, because I've done that on my own. I've just gone rogue with training and done that with teams. And it's much more beneficial because now they've also seen where everything is on the floor. It feels a little bit more real world, and practical. And now you kind of know the layout. So like, to use Williams Sonoma as an example with kitchen products, like if I give you all the knowledge about like every kind of pan, I'm like, okay, this is Lodge, this is All Clap, this is La Creuset, this is Staub. Here's the benefits of each. Here's where they're made. Here's whatever. You're going to remember pieces and parts of that. But if I'm like, these are pans, we sell them. Do you have a favorite? Do you know anything about it? Let's start there. And then kind of like go from there. And then once they're on the floor for a couple of weeks and they've seen them, they've touched them, they've heard other sales associates explain them to customers. Now we're going to go back and you're going to do the deep dive into what all these things are. And now you're actually going to remember because you're going to be like, oh yeah, La Creuset, those are the ones we had in the front bay where I told you that I love the teal. Okay, yep, now I got it. And the Lodge, that's the one, the cast iron that's in the back. Oh yeah, that customer came in. I think her name was Pam. She was telling us that she's had them for years. Like the training then becomes a little bit more real and remembering that product knowledge becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I want to follow up. That was the perfect segue into one of my questions, which is, what does a new hire actually need to know on day 1? But right before you answer that, before we move on from pre-boarding, anything else to say about a good or bad experience other than the tech issues from going from accepting an offer to your first day?
I think really, first of all, clear communication about like where to be, when to be there, who you're meeting in the store, especially if it's like a bigger company with lots of employees, just so the person doesn't have that anxiety of like, oh, I guess I'll go to the register and say I'm here for my first day and, be nervous. Like, who are you looking for? Where do you go? Where's the back door or wherever you're supposed to head to?
Yeah.
And then second of all, and this comes down to the manager, this has nothing to do with corporate, unless of course it's a store manager training. And then it's, that's a little bit different, but making sure that you're fully ready for that person. Do you have little bag goodies for them? Please tell me you put it all together. Like if it's somewhere where they wear an apron, is it in a bag with like, maybe they get some free merch to start? Does it have their name on it? Like a folder, something to write with? Like, are you ready for them to start? Because if you are taking them to the back room and then you're like, hold on, let me move this employee's coffee. And like, okay, the jacket is on the chair. Let me move it so you can sit. Like, it just feels like you're not prepared to start that training and like they don't matter. All in that first 30 seconds, you've just shown like this person does not matter versus like I've walked into places and people are like, here's your little bag. We gave you a little folder. We stamped your name on it. Like, and it just it's the little things, but it's like, okay, you thought about my training. You did some work to prepare to make sure that you were going to give me a good training.
Mhm.
And those little things go a long way, I think, in that first, like, literally 90 seconds of going to your first day.
Oh my God. So easy and so true. I just had like a out of body experience just remembering times where I showed up to job and you just feel like you're in the way because everyone is
Yes.
so busy and it's such a horrible feeling to be like, "Hi, I'm here to help, but obviously I'm not."
I will never forget showing up to my first day at Starbucks. And for the first 2 weeks of my training, I was trained by this lovely store manager who's been there for like 16 years or something crazy, Diana. And the entire first day at Starbucks, I'll never, like, it will just forever be important to me. She scheduled her team so that she did not have to be on the floor at all. And we sat together at a table, and she, like, I walked in and she immediately probably saw the look on my face and she was like, are you Matt? And I was like, I am. And she was like, go order like a coffee and like whatever you'd like, and then come sit down. So I did that and I sat down, and then she just had a bag ready for me, my name on it, with my apron, my free bag of coffee that you get, and a folder with all the nuts and bolts of training in it. And then she just was like, so where have you worked, who have you been, like, wasn't an interview, but it was like a, let's get to know each other. We're not going to rush into the bones of culture or anything. Just, who are you, why are you here? And it wasn't rushed and it wasn't forced, and she didn't have 1,000 things that she was trying to do. And I think that really matters, and that really leaves an impact on people.
Yeah, that what, like 20 minutes, 30 an hour, but
Mhm.
and the amount of time it probably earned them and you staying a little bit longer because you're just feeling good about starting the job at the company seems like a
Exactly.
no-brainer. Okay, and then before, so how about in between though? So between you got the offer and as you noted last episode, sometimes there could be 12, however many days in between starting. Any conversation? Do you like an email other than, the logistical stuff about where to park and who to see and who to find when you get there?
Yeah, I mean, so I do something that's not required, but something that, the last few people I've onboarded have really been complimentary about, which is I reach out in between and just say, I'm really excited for you to start.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for you to be here on Monday. And let's say I'm sending that on a Wednesday, but let's say like the offer and all that stuff got settled the prior week. So it's just like from my perspective, it's just a nice thing to do. But also the feedback I got from some people that onboarded recently with me was they were like, it just was like a nice, like, oh my God, they really are excited, and like kind of got rid of some nerves about like first day jitters.
Yeah.
And I'm me, so I like put a little like personal joke in there because one of the new hires had gone to design school. And so the Met Gala had happened after we gave him his offer. And I sent him a text that said, really looking forward to you starting next Monday. The only thing you need to know when you get in the building is top 3 and bottom 3 Met Gala looks. And he sent a text back and he said, I'm super excited, and I will have those ready for you, because I wanted him to know that, like, just show up. Like, we're going to give you all the tools to be great at this job.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to, like, because I've had quite a few employees in the last couple of years who I love. They were like a little bit overachievers. They're already doing like product knowledge research, and it's like, I love that, but also like, we're going to give you those tools. Like, just show up ready, excited, and that's it. That's all that's required. We hired you. We love you. So, can't wait for you to be here. And I think sending that message is cheap and free, quite frankly, and easy, and doesn't take a lot of effort, and yet it has a lot of impact. So, like, I think it's important.
Agreed. And it was a little indication that you know him personally. You've taken an interest in him as a human.
Exactly. Which I, again, will say just every episode, we're all human. It's important. And we need to, as society moves more towards trying to automate and AI its way through everything, I think it's important that we like recognize that we're like leading people, not computers.
Agreed. Okay, so what does a new hire actually need to know on day one?
Whew. Becky, with the simple yet complicated questions. I think what they really need to know, actually, to go back to what you said, is that they made the right choice.
Yeah.
That's what they need to know. And in order for them to know they made the right choice. I actually think the first day should be a little bit of a convincing them they made the right choice, like how great the culture is, how good the benefits are, and here they all are, and here's how to access them, here's how to log into all them. A lot of these companies, especially bigger ones, there's a lot of like sort of side benefits over here that you have to log into a separate thing. Like, go over that then. Be like, you can get cheap movie tickets, Starbucks, you can get free Spotify. Do that on day one. Make them be like, wow, they're just throwing, I got the free product and now I'm getting the discounts. Like, I think it's important to obviously hit upon culture as well in the first day.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't actually think we should be really talking too much about product or really anything practical on the floor. It should really be I just want you to know that you've come to the right place. We're excited that you're here. Here's all that we're going to offer you. And then obviously go over some expectations of what you want from them once they're on the floor. But I also think, again, that should be like wrapped in this sort of cocoon of this is what I want from you on the floor. And I hired you. So I know that you have what it takes to do those things. And here's how I think you can take your personality that I know so far and become a great part of our team. That way they leave after their first day and they go, wow, I have made the right decision. I got some free swag. Everyone loves swag. I know my benefits. I know how to access them. I know how to log into everything I need to log into. I feel comfortable finding the resources, whether they be HR or my timesheet or my pay stub or my dental insurance. I know what company I joined with through the culture and their values. And I know how I individually as a person, because of the personality that I have, can contribute to those values once I'm on the floor. And I feel really good about being able to do that. That's day one.
I love it. And you can really start to see how the compounding effect of how, what we've been talking about, if you get the job ad right and then you get the interview right, it sets you up so much better for onboarding and to be able to do what you just described.
And a lot of it comes down to like link back to that episode. If I know someone because I've interviewed them and I didn't just ask them, like, tell me about a time when you made a mistake and you fixed it. I get to know them a little bit more personally and on a human level. I'm able to, on that first day, take that person's humanness and apply it to what we actually need on the sales floor and make it real for them. And not just say, we really value great customer service, because honestly, what the hell does that mean? Instead, you can make it really specific and be like, you talked about in your interview how, again, to my question, and I'm not saying everyone needs to ask this specific question, but you talked about how if you could wave a magic wand, you would start a business that would help people do XYZ. So like you're really looking for like how to uplift and improve people's day-to-day or whatever. And that's exactly what we need you to do here on the sales floor. How do you look at the customer who walks in and go, I think I know what's going to make your day better? And then do that thing. And we trust that you're going to do the right thing. Again, that's why we hired you. And I know that you're that type of person because you've told me that. And I believe you because you're genuine. You're not spelling out this generic, like, excellent customer service. You're saying, I know you. This is what you can do. Let's do it.
Yeah. Can you tell when someone's going to stick? Are there signs? Stay around, I mean.
Ooh. In the beginning, well, so here's, I guess, this is going to sound, I feel like I always say this when I say something complimentary to myself, but it's going to sound full of myself, but I always have the goal of keeping people a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why I'm saying, because it's something I try to do, on the first day, I'm convincing them they've made the right decision. Like, I'm convincing them. And I feel like if I do that well, I can tell if they're going to stay because they seem genuinely excited by what I'm saying I'm offering. Mm-hmm. I can tell if they're not excited, if I'm doing my best to sell, because I'm not just selling the company when I have someone's first day. To be quite frank, I'm selling me. Here's how accommodating I'm going to be with your schedule. Here's the way I'm going to communicate with you about what I expect and the schedule. And here's how I'd like you to communicate with me about what you need and don't need in terms of feedback, days off, whatever it may be. And I really am like selling the brand and selling myself. And I can tell pretty much right away when someone's like, oh my God, that's great. I love this. And they're going to stick around. And then I can also tell when they're like, okay, I guess that sounds cool. Because if I'm doing my best and then they're not feeling it, I can kind of see it. But I think when you don't do that, when you're not even trying to sell the company because you kind of like, you've already taken it for granted. You're like, they've signed the hire paperwork. They're here. I don't need to sell it. I think you risk disengaging them from day one, but you also miss out on the opportunity to assess how excited they are by how excited you are about the company and your leadership.
Right. Their level of excitement is tied to yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you ever had to re-onboard someone who was trained poorly?
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't call it re-onboarding, but I guess yes, I have. But I don't think I'd use that word because I think then they'd be offended. But I've had to do it quite a bit actually. And the methodology for me is always there's something in the onboarding that I myself forget. I don't care how long you've been with a brand, like there's some nugget of information that when you go back through it training someone, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot we did that, or I forgot that product is like that, or whatever the piece of information you forget is. And I've always used that vulnerability of, I don't know everything still. Let's take you through it, because I think there's some things that would help you and you'd gain some insight by going through these modules or this training or this exercise. But I first share what I need to learn new, and then I go through it too. And then we can share. I can be like, hey, I learned that I've been doing this whole procedure wrong, because that's happened to me before, even as a store manager. I'm like, oh, wow, I've been doing that wrong for a while. And I let the employee know that. And then that makes them feel comfortable that, again, to go back to everything I've ever said about making mistakes, they're like, okay, cool. Because even if I need to go through onboarding with this person because they got bad training or because they didn't fully give it the attention it deserves, I still feel like I owe them my best self. So I'm going to go through it. I'm never going to use it as like a punishment, because that's no one's going to learn that way.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking maybe even less about product knowledge or tangible things like that, but more about their thoughts on the company or the culture or customer service, the quote unquote softer skills.
Well, see, this is a little tricky, because I am an odd little duck. And when it comes to teaching people soft skills, I don't find that like formal trainings will work. I find knowing my team is my greatest skill. It will help me do everything I need to do to motivate and get the best performance out of a team. So for me, when I've had issues with like soft skills, I've known enough about that employee to use that information about them to help me improve those skills. So for example, I've had employees where their customer service is a little too terse, or they are too quick to say no, or they're not accommodating enough or empathetic enough. And you're not going to teach someone, okay, here's how you don't sound like a jerk or have, resting bitch face. Here's, whatever. Those same employees often have shared a story with me about like, so yesterday I went to Target and I was trying to check out and I saw the sign. It said $12.99 for the mascara and they were trying to charge me $6.99. It was ridiculous. And then I had to wait there for 10 minutes while they got a manager. Like, they're telling me the story about their own bad experience. And I use those anecdotal things they've told me to illustrate how they can improve their own skills and how a customer may feel on the end of their abruptness or whatever it is, based on what I know about them and what they've experienced in life. And it's not always directly a customer service situation, but again, it's using them so that it's personal and real to them and they can understand.
That sounds very clever and human. I'm assuming that's not something that you were taught.
No, it wasn't.
How did you learn to be a good manager?
Oh my God, Becky.
And maybe like to ground that in the subject matter of today, was it in a module? Was there ever something that you watched in canned content or read in a handbook that that helped in that kind of way, that helped you be a more human, empathetic kind of manager?
I really am hating. First of all, I just want to start by saying that, like, I don't think you could ever call yourself a good manager. So you asking me that question is interesting, but I guess other people can tell me I'm a good manager, but I don't know that I would ever label myself that. But how I became, a very empathetic leader, besides the fact that I just have a whole bundle of feelings inside, is really through like a series of different experiences. A lot of it was actually just having a lot of poor leadership when I was younger and, in hourly roles, and then just kind of looking around and being like, well, this isn't motivating. And then being like, well, what would motivate me? And then kind of using that. And then I did have a few great experiences, and I may have shared this before, but I don't think I have on the podcast actually, which is one of my first managers, Denise, when I was a sales associate at Old Navy, way before I was a GM at Old Navy. I talk a lot, as everyone who's ever met me knows. And she'd like put me at a table to like fold some clothes, and I would inevitably 5 minutes later end up at another table where another associate was telling them a story or hearing their story or just like chit-chatting, because you can't just put me at a table to do a thing. I'm not staying there. And she didn't punish me. And I didn't realize this till years later. Like, I didn't even honestly think about it until more recently, but she didn't she didn't pull me aside and go, Matt, you need to stop talking. You need to fold the clothes. When I ask you to fold a table, you need to finish folding the table, because that is how most leaders would respond to that situation. Instead, she didn't even say anything about talking. She just was like, hey, so today, it just started one day randomly. Hey, you're going to be in the fitting room today. And then she put me in the fitting room, and I thrived, and I was great in the fitting room because I could chat, I could fold, I could basically multitask and do like a lot of different things, and I could talk to customers, and then employees would come in to like drop off more clothes, and then I could do a little quick chat, and then they went away because they were better at walking away than I am. And it was someplace I thrived. And so working for her and then going forward in my career, it was kind of like how would Denise lead a little bit? Because I saw her do things that it took me years to realize why she was doing them or how well they worked until I really thought about it. And so I think good leaders are made for sure, but I don't think, no, it's not through a module. It's through seeing good leadership. It's through real life exercises and feedback. And it's through wanting to be a good leader, I think, is probably the most important. I think there are a lot of leaders out there who want to be a good leader, but they would say they want to be a good leader, but what they really want is to be a good metric achiever. And that's not the same thing.
Right. Well, so speaking of, let's talk about what maybe corporate wants or what you think corporate expects out of you as a store manager in the onboarding of an assistant store manager or associates.
Hmm.
For one, what is that? If you could describe it, do you have a playbook? Is there like a store manager playbook or tool guide for onboarding new people?
Yeah, I would say at this point, a lot of companies do have a lot of invested time and resources into their sort of training and development departments. So there's a guide with the modules that they should take, and you can check them off, and there's usually like some sort of rubric of like, did they actually go through all of the things? Better companies even still have, here's what they should actually know. So you should be able to like quiz your new employee, and like, or anyone should be able to quiz them and be like, what is our mission statement? What are our values? What is our customer service approach? So yeah, there usually is like a specific thing they're trying to get out of onboarding,
Mhm.
hopefully. But again, the best companies, in my opinion, it's a little bit more fluid and a little bit elongated. Like, it's because I think for everyone, every single human on the planet that you onboard, it actually can't take the same amount of time, because those employees are coming with their own knowledge sets that are different. And some people might need a little bit longer in an area or a little bit shorter in an area. And so the best companies I've seen are like, it's kind of like a 90-day window of like, here's what they need to know by 30, by 60, by 90. And then also you get the 40 hours of training in the first week. And as long as you hit those benchmarks to 90, like, you're good. So you can kind of tailor it a little bit. And I think that's the best approach. A too rigid approach just makes it so that some people aren't getting enough of what they need. And other people, you're going through so much they already know they're going to be disengaged in training because they're like, okay, like I understand.
Yeah. Well, to that point, do you feel like those 30, 60, 90-day expectations are reasonable?
Um, yes and no. I think they're reasonable, but I think it's sometimes hard to actually like keep track, especially if you're hiring many employees, like who's at a 30 or a 60 or a 90, and then have the time, whether that be like labor or just, resources to just make sure you can actually have that check-in and make sure you can fill in those knowledge gaps before they hit those benchmarks.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, what do you think corporate thinks your role in someone's onboarding is? And then part B, what do you wish corporate understood about a store leader's role in onboarding?
I think most companies think it's our job to facilitate the onboarding. So not necessarily do it ourselves. Because again, if you're working in a bigger store, like a bigger box, like you probably have another manager that's doing it.
Mhm.
But it's your job to facilitate it, schedule it, communicate all the things you need to communicate to make sure the person like shows up, does the training, has the training. And if you're not doing the training, following up with the trainer. So I think that's corporate's expectation is like facilitation. I think what I wish they knew was how important it is for us to have that dedicated time. So again, payroll. And not just you need double, I don't want to say double the payroll, but you need double the hours for at least the first day. So like if you give me 40 hours of training someone and I'm training them, well, I need at least 60. Maybe I don't need 80, but I need 60 because I need to cover myself off the floor as well as that person so that I am truly giving them the dedicated time. And what I wish they knew is how important that person will feel and how much that extra 20 hours you give me. I get it. It's expensive. Right now, a lot of places pay 20 bucks an hour. So 20 hours, that's $400 extra I'm asking for. And I realize for every person I hire, that's not cheap. And I can do the math. I get it. But it's also about like that $400 is going to pay itself back in dividends in all the other people I don't have to hire because I did it right with this person I did hire.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you think that corporate's perception of your role in onboarding is facilitation. So all the material is made. You don't have to explain anything. Is that right?
I mean, within reason, yeah. I mean, a lot of companies have made it sort of dummy proof at this point.
Mhm.
It's pretty like, okay, here's the modules. Now you just have to like log into whatever that learning platform is and like have them go
Yeah.
through the modules. So yeah, it's pretty streamlined in that term. So I think that's part of the reason that from their perspective, it's probably like, okay, this you shouldn't need to handhold. But to just throw in an anecdote here, the thing I love to do with someone's training is if it is all modules and the company does not have like floor time, I just do it anyway. So like if I know they're taking the customer service module, I will often have them do that. And then I will give them like a 20-minute anecdotal little Matt story. Usually 20 minutes is multiple stories of like times where, so let's say we have a policy of a really liberal return policy or something. I then explain to that person onboarding some funny stories too. Like, here's some really funny customer stories. I never give them bad ones because I'm not trying to scare them away. So I either give them funny stories or I give them a time it could have been a bad customer situation, but we fixed it and then the customer left laughing. And I give them just something real and tangible that the training is not giving them for two reasons. One, so they have practical understanding of how this policy applies to the real world, and two, so that they are not just sitting watching a computer screen. Like I can just sort of razzle dazzle them like some entertaining anecdotes and make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit. Tell me about the modules. How are they typically? Do they feel current? Do they feel informative, relevant, well-paced?
I okay, I think actually if you I have never thought about this until you just asked this question, but I think if I were to think about all the modules I've taken in the last like 10 years, I actually think that would tell me everything I need to know about a company's culture. I never thought about that. But now that I'm thinking about it, the companies who are overly rigid, who have a lot of different rules, who micromanage a lot of things, they're the ones where the modules are like really boring and were, again, written with lawyers in the room. And
Wait,
they're
wait.
like, bad 3D, like the first version of the Simpsons graphics of like, Bob is going to work today. We expect Bob to blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay. There's actually a one-to-one match of like that type of module with the kind of company where like you kind of won't get to have a sense of self or personality. Versus, I don't want to name any names, but there's a couple of companies I've worked for that like their modules are much more human and fun. And like, actually, you're like, oh, there's two companies I can think of actually where I watch the modules and I'm like, oh, we hired a videographer for this. Like this is like cinematography quality module. And those ones are more entertaining. You can tell a lot of thought went into them because it's not just, I'm thinking of one in particular where they went over the mission statement and it wasn't a video. And they might seem like they're the same, but they're not to a first day employee. There's always a video about the mission statement. But is it like some executive or like the, VP of stores or something who's like, my name's Sarah Lawson. I'm the VP of stores. And here at ABCY Company, our mission is to exceed customer expectations. Is it that? Or is it like this really fun video of like employees in stores, even if it's like acting, even if it's like, but it's like in a real store and like the customer comes up and there's like a whole like almost skit or play and they show you. And then like maybe the mission statement is, overlaid on the video, or maybe they say it in voiceover or both. But it brings the mission statement to life. Like that's a way to show us the mission statement. That's also a way to engage someone in a video. I mean, we're talking about also onboarding employees who like are scrolling through 2-minute TikToks. Like, are you captivating that person? And if you are, you're probably doing a great job at creating modules. And if we're watching some like 1983 Simpsons version 101, well, no one's engaged. We forgot what your mission statement was. And there are plenty of companies still doing that.
Oh, I know. I so I so appreciate that as someone with a design background and a branding background whose whole role is ultimately just thinking of your audience, right? What is going to resonate and change the minds, hearts, actions of our audience? And then sometimes when I look at some of the ones that are active right now, some of the onboarding modules, I'm like, are you onboarding 5-year-olds? Like, why does this look like MS clip art in,
Yes,
Word
no,
document?
exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the people we're onboarding at this point, a lot of people, they've never seen MS clip art. So they're like, what is this? And you're like,
Yeah.
this is before your time, dear.
Good point. Good point. Yes. So yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? And that speaks to what we talk about all the time in terms of operational engagement. Like, show me through your operations if you care about me or you care about my retention, enthusiasm, excitement. It's that is a signal of truth if it is engaging, and obviously a signal of potential trust erosion if it's something that feels like you haven't looked at in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The note about the 5-year-old is actually something I'm really curious to ask you about. This idea of knowing your audience and communicating to store audiences, which is so wildly diverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often what I hear from corporate departments is we want to use plain language. We want to make it really easy to understand. They're busy. They don't know this kind of corporate speak. Do you feel like that goes too far sometimes?
Yes.
Cool.
You weren't even finished with the question. No. Sorry. Like, yes. I think, and I mean, this goes back to what I said about like sort of class and ego and like sort of corporate versus field. But I think, not to put too fine a point on it, but it's like at Williams-Sonoma, I had an older team who I had an employee who ran multiple banks and then, worked at Williams-Sonoma as her retirement job, basically. She was also the first women's wrestling coach for boys wrestling for like high school in the country ever. I'm saying that because like That's also the audience. A hyper qualified person who's in the back doing shipment at 75. Go, Donna, go. Her choice, just need to point that out. But also, like, I have an employee, a former employee who he worked for me for a couple of years. He is now a VP at Ernst & Young. I have another employee who's a music writer, former employee, music writer for a very popular and well-circulated hip-hop magazine where he has interviewed a lot of artists people listening to this podcast have heard of. Those are also the people you're talking to. People who are smart and capable and have dreams and hopes and aspirations far beyond the walls of retail. And they understand big words and they know when you're pandering to them and when you're talking down to them. And wouldn't we rather set the bar higher? And if I do have an employee who doesn't understand the language that you're putting in these trainings or the concepts, now we can give them those tools. And now we've just given ourselves a more valuable employee. Because when you dumb it down for everyone, also people lower their own bar. They're like, okay, the bar is low because I'm watching MS Clip Art where they're like, customer service is where you provide service for a customer. Like, they're like, okay, cool. The bar, like, you expect nothing from me. And so that is what I will give you.
Yeah, and I will say the one challenge I've gotten on that, I understand, here in Canada and in the US too, there are multiple employees who English is their second language. Maybe they're just learning. And so that's one of the reasonings behind using more simple language. And
And
I'd
they
be
can't use Google Translate to come up with another language for their training program so people can take it in their first or their native tongue.
right.
Not to cut you off, but I
No.
call BS, first of all. And second of all, first of all, yikes.
Oh.
That explanation is even worse than thinking. It's almost worse than the class thing, because to me, it's like, do you know how many people are in retail jobs whose maybe degree from where, maybe where they were born somewhere else and they have a degree in that country and it doesn't equate to Canada or the US. Maybe, I've had employees who were like an engineer
Yeah.
in the Middle East somewhere, and that doesn't they can't just use that degree here. So then they're like, oh, I'm going to be a cashier at wherever. It's like that person is smart. That person is so capable. And either I'll teach them the word you think they can't understand, and yay, we've expanded their vocabulary and made them more confident, or you can just put it in their native tongue and they can learn it that way and everybody wins. Like,
Mhm.
there's not an excuse I think a corporate team could give me that would make me feel like, oh yeah, that's valid. Let's just talk down to people.
Yeah, because I mean, if language is a barrier anyway, it's a barrier no matter what.
Correct.
I mean, they can still handle an interesting, deep thought. I
Exactly.
mean, yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. Feel validated. So moving on, I'm curious. Is there something you tend to teach new team members that corporate didn't tell you to do? I guess what I'm asking in a way is, what do you feel like is left out in onboarding?
Interesting. Some things that are missing just in general, I think and I think we need to put them in now for very specific reasons, just like communication things. I think a lot of people could use a good, here's how we communicate with each other course, like respectful communication essentially, which some companies are starting to put in there, which is good. That seems reductive, but it's not. It's necessary, trust me. But also, let me think, because I know there are things missing. I mean, what I think I would like to see, actually, now that you're saying that, is rather, I don't know that there's specific things missing, because to go back to each individual person, they're all going to have what they feel like was a gap in their training. We've made an assumption about who we're hiring or the type of people we're hiring, or maybe one person has a gap and the other doesn't. I think there needs to be some sort of not feedback, because most companies provide that now. They send people a personal email. I've gotten one of the last few jobs I have where how was your onboarding? What did you learn? What feedback do you have? And that's great. But I think there also should be maybe it's at 180 days. Maybe you only get this once you've been somewhere 6 months, where you can have a 5 additional hours of training on the topics of your choice. Something to fill in some gaps, because I feel like every employee I've ever had has some gaps around the 6-month mark that they feel like, I feel like I missed that or didn't absorb or I didn't get enough. but it needs to be customized to the person. I feel like that's what we're missing, the customization piece a little bit to what that person actually needs. Because again, if I hire someone, if I'm working at a denim store and that person has worked at many denim stores, or I'm working at the Gap and they've worked at J. Crew and Aeropostale, they're going to understand, they need to know our way of doing things, but they're going to understand like folding and clothing. But if I'm hiring someone from food service into clothing, the learning curve is much different. And like they might need some more information down the road. So just having an ability to adapt to people's knowledge gaps.
That's really interesting. I wonder, would that work in terms of future goals as well? Like almost elective onboarding for this is something I think I might be interested in. Tell me how it works at this company.
I mean, I think that would be amazing. I've seen tastes of it at places where it's usually around product knowledge though, but I think it could work for things that weren't product knowledge, where they would have like an elective, like, hey, you can, if there's time or whatever, you can take this like 2 hour, like more deep dive into our hair care line or whatever it may be. So that you just, cause that's something you're passionate about or you want to know more about or whatever. And like people love that. I mean, there's a lot of employees you almost can't give enough training to or enough knowledge to, but oftentimes you like run out of time or resources, or for the store manager, you're like, I am one person. So I think having some sort of elective programming would go a long way to better engagement as well.
Yeah, agreed. It's almost like a little independent brand university.
Yeah.
Okay, how about, is there anything you would cut from onboarding that is always there, that every time you see it or your teammates when they're onboarding see it, roll their eyes and go like, oh my God, this again, I know.
I can't because they're legally required. And I say that not because I don't care about legal requirements,
Right.
because I feel like even those are talking down to people. Do I think sexual harassment should be a part of your onboarding modules because like we need to do it? Yes. I don't think it should be day one for a variety of reasons, but yes, I think it should be in there. But do I think we need a video that no one's updated since like 1986 where like some man in a suit is like, hey Mary, your skirt looks good today? No, because I don't think most people would say that nowadays. I think sexual harassment has also changed. So I think if you're going to include sexual harassment, I want to see a video where that same man, well, not that same man, but like a man is now in updated clothing and is walking up to an employee and was like, hey, I saw your Instagram post. That's a nice bikini top. Like, I want to see something that like when a young person watches it, it feels topical to now. And they understand what sexual harassment looks like in 2025. So like when you have those legal things that you just threw in there and you give me some video you haven't updated, it feels like you should cut it, because it's like, why am I watching this thing where like a woman is wearing pantyhose and like most employees in retail don't even know what pantyhose are.
Right.
So those things need to be updated if you're going to include them. So it's not necessarily cutting them. It's like, how do we make this relevant? And it's the same thing with like anything about discrimination or any sort of harassment. Don't be afraid to make, if you're gonna have to talk about it, there's a way to have that conversation that's also, and I don't want to say entertaining because that's probably the wrong word, but there's a way to make those videos engaging and real, because discrimination is real. Sexual harassment is real. They happen every day in every workforce. Talk plainly and show what it really looks like. Don't have some weird fake skit that isn't even worth an SNL sketch.
Yeah, it goes back to knowing your audience, making it feel relevant, and like you actually care enough about the content to make it compelling enough and feel relevant to them. Okay. My big thing, what I've already said to you, I think, is that corporate teams, at least from my side of it, they approach onboarding in silos. So they all know what their required learnings are, and that's what they do in streams, but they're never, or at least rarely, checking in with each other to see what's already been covered or to see where the other person left off, or if it's too much. Like there's no bigger picture context. Again, it's all from the frame of like, what does my team need them to know, probably legally, compliance wise. And nobody is considering the new hires experience. So that's one big thing. And I imagine that way that things, for one, they get potentially repeated. They also feel just stylistically different.
To my point, not
Yeah.
to cut you off, but to my point about like the sexual harassment thing,
Right.
that goes into what you're saying is it can feel jarring because we go from like and company culture, and then it's like and don't sexually harass your coworkers, and now the product knowledge, and you're like whoa, whoa, whoa. Like there needs to be either a break pre-scheduled for certain things or like a conversation with your manager after that. Like I would love, I mean, I always do this anyway, but there should be a formal like, now let's have a debrief. Let's talk about what you just watched. And do you
Mhm.
have questions and or concerns or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that was mentioned was the hyper focus on online training. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but this idea that, like a mock-up register or watching the module to learn how to do something. But it's really different in the situation when you're actually at a register with customers, with people asking questions and phones ringings and stuff like that. So do you feel like there's enough on the floor training included in onboarding?
No. And I also think that like managers are ill equipped sometimes to provide that training well, sometimes because of payroll, sometimes just because of skill gaps.
Mm,
Because let's say you, and I actually posted about this on Old Navy, about Old Navy a couple weeks ago or so on LinkedIn, because I had an employee who wanted to learn register, but was basically scared because she was an anxious person. But I
mm,
think it also goes to when you're onboarding anyone in general, like this, what I did to get her trained, which is like, if you're going to have someone on the register training in real life, which I agree with you, I think it should be less module, more on the floor. So to answer your question, to start off, yes, more on the floor training, 100%. But you
mm,
also need some backup employees to help you with that. So the training can be like a great experience for that employee, but also a great experience for the customer. So the customer has no gap in experience because you're like, this is our person training on register. Because what that ends up doing is you shortchange the person's training. Because if you're up there on register, you have a line. If you don't have two good cashiers sort of flanking you, because that's what I did for this person,
mm,
then your customer's going to ask something, but they're going to be in a rush and they're going to be annoyed because the person's training. And then because they're rushed and you want to give them a good experience, you shortchange your employee's experience. So you end up hitting the buttons for them and they're trying to watch you and follow along, but they can't because they're new and the register is confusing to them. And they're like, wait, what did you just do? And you're like, well, I don't have time to explain. I'll explain to you after the customer leaves because they're in a rush. And then you're printing the receipt and you're throwing it at them. And then the employee's like, ugh. And then before they know it, another customer's already walked up and you're like, greet them. And it's just not a great way to train people. But so many people do it. I mean, I've been trained like that as a store manager in a new store. And luckily for me, I've worked on a billion different registers. So,
mm.
like, once you've learned a couple, you've learned them all. But like for me, I can like pick it up quickly, but it's not a great experience for anyone because you also just feel stupid because you're like, oh, I'm sorry I didn't move fast enough. But that's because you didn't like plan to have that like flanking and protection. And I used to like make, I'm not even a big sports watcher, but I used to make weird sports analogies sometimes to teams. And I'd be like, when I was training someone, I'd be like, I am the quarterback and this employee is the ball. And I need you to make sure no one disturbs us.
Cute.
I cannot be sacked on the floor today. And so, because that's also informing your team. Like, we're training someone, and I want them to get the great experience that you got. And do you remember how everyone protected us from the goings on of the store? I need you to do that. So, it's also like a cultural thing that needs to happen in order for more training on the floor to be successful and impactful for someone's learning.
That's really lovely. It makes onboarding seem like a team effort,
Hmm.
which I had never really thought of it like that.
And I think it is a team effort because if you build the right culture as well, you
Mm,
also want the employees to train that person well because that person in 5 days is going to be on the floor with them.
yeah.
And it's going to make their job harder if that person wasn't trained well or didn't get the best experience.
And that seems like it could be a self-perpetuating cycle. For one,
Mhm.
obviously, we've talked about, the better onboarding experience you have, the more likely you are to stay longer. But then if you got that kind of onboarding experience, you're more likely to want to play a role in someone else's onboarding experience when it's their time. And it's the exact opposite. Like you always hear those stories about those just awful bosses who are like, well, I had to go through it to get to where I am, so I'm going to put you through it.
Exactly. And I think I've actually a couple places I've worked, especially when I like start somewhere and like I'm understaffed. In the beginning, I like kind of have to short change people's training because I just need them on the floor. And I've actually learned over time that one of the things I need to do is explain to them and show appreciation at the same time and be like, listen, I had to rush you on the floor. And I so appreciate that you were able to like pick it up and you're amazing now. But now we're going to start onboarding new people. And I really need to make sure no one has to be a sacrificial lamb the way you were. So I need your help to make sure that they get a great training experience. And I want you to know that I know you didn't get this and I'm sorry, but I want to do it the right way for the future of this team. And I think that's really important to explain to people because I have made the mistake of not explaining that to people and then having people be like, whoa, like, I guess we train people right now in this store. That was a real comment someone made. So I think that's also important to communicate to your team as you're going through that process.
Yeah. Just be honest about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in wrapping up, in summary, what I'm hearing is onboarding is really like your first behind the scenes look. It's where you might actually, the first time you're going from a customer to an employee, part of this team. So super critical. I don't think many people would argue that. I think considering the experience of the person being onboarding is something that could still be improved. Even if it seems like as something as simple as, it's no secret that internal communications get less attention than consumer-facing communications or content. So be reasonable there. Make sure it feels relevant and make sure it feels like you care about what you're actually telling them, because otherwise, why should they? And I think I understand, of course, the tactical goals of onboarding. People have to understand their role and their responsibilities and their company. But asking yourself if your onboarding process validates, did I make the right choice? Will I like it here? Can I do this? Is an important lens. Anything else I'm missing?
No, I think that's perfect. I think those 3 questions would be a great filter for all the teams that come up with onboarding modules to kind of ask themselves, are we accomplishing? Could this person go home at the end of onboarding and feel like yes, yes, and yes?
Yeah. And if you're someone who is in L&D and so you're just focusing on your L&D role, if you're someone in HR, so you're just focusing on your HR role, find someone who's going to be the point person for that. Right? Because I think that's why it's just no one's job right now to make sure that those questions are being answered favorably. Okay. As always, please reach out. We are open to feedback. We get all kinds of it. And we are open to all kinds of it. And, to be completely honest, again, we're not here to I don't need to speak for you, but I'm certainly not here to be right about anything. I'm here to understand and get it right. So yeah, find us on LinkedIn. There's just no way to say I couldn't get subscribe out of my mouth. It was just ugh, I don't think I can do it.
I don't think either of us have it in us. No,
just let us know what you liked or you didn't like and if it helped.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks as always, Matt.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.